Community Highlights. Another local exclusive from Southeastern Michigan's news and information station, MonroeCountyRadio.com.
This is our town, the place we call home.
Welcome to This Is Our Town with Jeff Yorkey, a local public affairs presentation on MonroeCountyRadio.com. Brought to you by Allen Chevrolet Cadillac. All roads lead to Chevrolet. Here's Jeff Yorkey.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of This Is Our Town. I'm Jeff Yorkey. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And it's week 2 of our political debate, so to speak, for our 16th District Senate candidates. Last week we had Katie Beth Davis on, and this week we've got Joe Babe himself, Joe Bellino. Joe, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be here, but I can't believe I'm on week 2 and not on week 1.
Hey, you know what?
Oh,
it's just a.
You must be a Democrat.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, yes, it was a Democrat. Now you know that has nothing to do.
I know. I got to give you a hard time.
You know, it was an interesting discussion that we had. Good. I thought last week with Katie Beth Davis. I thought I was very curious. We talked a few minutes before the show started about Custer statue and the activism that sort of personifies Katie Beth Davis. Mm-hmm. And so the first half of that show, we talked about, because I really wanted to know, and I thought that the electorate out there would be interested as well. What I wanted to know was how she got that way. So I wanted to know about her background. I wanted to know what made her tick. I wanted to know what it was that made her get involved in the first place. Now, I know because, as an attorney, a lot of times if I'm having a trial, I will during voir dire when we're talking to the jurors, I will tell jurors, I'll say, listen, you know what? This is a case about say a shooting, for example, and I will say, I'll ask people, do you know anybody that's close to you that's ever been a victim of a shooting? And if they have, sometimes while they may be a great juror ordinarily, that fact that they were a victim and it was so close to home might make them kind of bad at being a juror in this particular case. And so I know that everybody brings their own experiences into whatever it is that they're doing. So what I wanted to know from her was what experiences did she have that made her made her politically the way she was. Now, I know you and I have had discussions in the past. And you're not afraid to talk about your addiction. You're a recovering addict, and I know because I've watched some of the things that you've done in the legislature. You've used that experience to help other people who suffer from the same maladies that you did, and all the things that you went through, getting through all that stuff. What other things, Joe, make you tick? What other things was about your background made you, number one, maybe want to do this? How did you become a Republican? Sure. We laughed about the Democrat Republican thing. I asked her, hey, where did your political beliefs, where did they stem from? What about you?
I think I grew up in a Democratic family. In fact, I know I did. Mm-hmm. My Italian grandfather, they were all Democrats. My mother's father, my papaw from Tennessee, they were all Democrats. We were put into a silo. But I realized growing up that we had this work ethic, and we wanted to work hard and be responsible for what we did. We revered Jesus Christ. We prayed a lot. We gave thanks. We took care of people in our family. And really, those are Republican principles. Mm-hmm. So as I grew older, I thought, I'm not really a Democrat. I'm probably a Republican. I did vote for Jimmy Carter, though, and I was 18 years old. And, he was going to change the world, come from Plains, Georgia, and change the world of Peanut Man. But that was the last time I voted for a Democratic president. But I'm not in the Republican silo forever because twice I voted for Ross Perot. Yeah. So being on the community college board for years, being a small business owner with a small party store, I was concerned for years about what people were doing for Walmart, Kroger, and Kmart, and nobody doing anything for the small man. I was concerned about the money going to K through 12, which we need, but why is U of M, MSU getting all this money, and then community colleges get the little sprinkles, whatever's left over. So that's what got me involved 20 years ago. To be, going to Lansing, advocating stuff, and that's what got me involved. And I realized when I was 30, I was Republican.
Now, did you get any pushback from other people in your family?
No. I mean, I know some of them don't vote for me, but that's fine. We all have families like that. In fact, I just picked my daughter up from Santa Barbara, California. She says she would vote for me. but I highly doubt it.
I know. I got a daughter like that.
And that's okay.
I'm
That's what
kinda
America's
glad,
about.
I'm kind of glad she did move to Toledo.
And if this was China, we'd probably throw her out in the sea or something. But
Yeah,
no,
right.
it's great. And so growing up with those values, working hard, small business, paying taxes, wanting to know where my tax money went. I mean, our tax money went to only a few places 50 years ago. Now look what happens.
Yeah, that's
now
true.
At one time, we were spending, $1 billion a year on the social safety net. Now we're spending billions upon billions upon billions. I read today that 285,000 illegals in the last 3 years have gotten free cell phones. That really bugs me. Why doesn't Joe Bellino get a free cell phone? Oh, no, he's working. He can't get a free cell phone. So things like that upset me. Why isn't it fair, So,
Do you think that we're going to see in this election, not just your election, but throughout the country? Do you think we're going to see some kickback from all of that? You think people are going to? I don't know.
yeah,
if
that's
the
what
right
the
word.
polls are saying. I mean,
Yeah.
I
I know that's what they say, but you can't trust polls. You should have figured that out in
with me.
2016, right?
With me, because I was told October 19th, you're down by 11, work hard and make it close.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
won by 7. What happened there?
Right.
I'm looking at that Ron Burgundy sign, and it's a red wave. It's a red wave. There are a lot of the blue-collar Democrat from 1995 has changed, because that man and woman, that person, is concerned about where his tax money goes, concerned about the border. We look at Monroe County, Michigan. Look at all the people who die of overdoses. We have so much more fentanyl coming over than we used to have before because we just have a porous border. I remember seeing when Trump was president, somebody died in the river. They drowned. It was on CNN, CNBC, ABC, NBC for a week straight. How many people have drowned the last year and a half, 2 years? Hundreds. I see nothing on TV anymore. So we don't care anymore about people drowning? That's the kind of stuff that bugs me about politics today. But there's a red wave because people are fed up. They want to change.
Let me ask you this from the other end of that. You talked about immigration, and you talked about about how unfair it is that a lot of these people are coming in, are getting a free cell phone, or they're getting a free this, or they're getting a free bus ticket to New York City or wherever, right? But what about the fact that a lot of these people are fleeing countries that like what a lot of our ancestors fled, whether it was religious persecution or economic persecution, that came here looking for a better land. And I know, we've heard presidents say this a million times: we're a country of immigrants, but we're also a country of laws. But don't they have a point? Doesn't the left have somewhat of a point when they say, "Hey, listen, these people are coming here looking for a better life. We should do everything in our power to give it to them." How do you
I love that.
respond
My
to
great
that?
grandfather came here from Calabria, Italy, to make triple the money in a stone quarry in Monroe than he did in Italy.
Yeah.
He went through the process. We have a process to come through. If they want to come to America and make 3 times the money they do in Guatemala or wherever they're coming from, have them go through the process.
Yeah.
That's what I say. We have a process. Right now, there is no process. Open up, let them come in. You got to come to this hearing, whatever day it was, and nobody's showing up. We know what's happening. Now, in 10 years, we may love this because it's given us, 1 million extra workers.
Right.
But one of the reasons we don't have enough workers right now today is that we've lost 1 million people to overdoses the last 20 years. 1 million young men and women who would be in the workforce.
Yeah.
1 million people. Michigan, we're hurting for workers in the hospitality industry, restaurants, hotels, whatever. We have 75,000 new workers in the marijuana industry that 3/4 came from that industry because they're not getting yelled at about their steak, but they're still making $20 an hour. So there's a lot of changes going on, and hopefully it levels out and cools down, and we have a lot of good workers. But I don't like what's going on there. I don't like all the people coming over the border and just and overburden Arizona, California,
Right.
Texas. And I saw that Miss Pelosi, I saw her on TV, and they had a quote. She was concerned about people sending immigrants north on buses and planes. And she said, why don't they send them to Florida where they could pick produce and work? Now, I think that's a racist comment. I'm glad I didn't say it, but Pelosi said it. I can't believe she'd say something that freaking stupid. But, that's Nancy Pelosi, so what can I say?
I agree. I get where you're coming from. Now, let me ask you. You talked about the labor shortage, and there is. I mean, it's funny to me. I talked to my wife about this. I'm like, the economy. It seems like it's on the verge of collapse. Yet unemployment still remains very low. Unemployment is still hovering around 3.5%, similar to what it was during the Trump years. Almost recovered back to exactly what it was after the pandemic. Inflation, yes, absolutely gone through the roof. In addition to the labor shortage from fentanyl overdoses and other things like that, we also have a baby boomer generation that's starting to retire. And so those are people that are going out of the workforce. Mm-hmm. So is it possible, and I'm just saying, is it possible that the Democrats, there's a method to their madness here, that they're opening up these borders, and yes, they think that they are also bringing in Democratic voters, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think that maybe there's a compromise that we could find here, where we could allow for the process, but maybe for the process to be a little bit easier, to allow for the labor shortage that we have in this country to be alleviated through immigration?
I think there is, and I think that's what should happen. I think we should do something about bringing workers in fields that we need workers for. I know people in the county that suffer in the summer with their businesses because they can't get enough HB2 visas. It's a messed up federal system. I'm not sure how we're going to fix it.
Right.
And until we sit down and start talking about changes to help the American process, the American economy, nothing's going to happen. We're going to sit in corners and silos and yell at each other.
Yeah, and there's been an awful lot of that going on.
Really,
honestly, Joe, that's what I try to do on this show. I try to show everybody, including last week when I had Katie Beth Davis on, I try to show everybody that I really do think that there is that there's a meeting point where we can all get together on stuff. We used to do that. I know when I first became politically active in the 80s, that Reagan and Tip O'Neill, they'd go to Camp David and go fishing together, and they'd work out some sort of a compromise between the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress.
If Tip O'Neill did that today, he would be primaried and lose his primary.
Yeah,
that's how it's become. If you're not left wing or right wing, I had a conversation with a guy named John from Hillsdale, and he runs part of the Republican Party in the Hillsdale area, which people say, oh, it's a crazies. Well, they're not crazies. They're conservative, and they're concerned about America. And he asked me why I didn't come around to them when I was on my, running my election. Mm-hmm. And I just said, I really didn't need you. I had to get Monroe County. I knew what the polling said. I had to get Monroe County hard, and that's how I won it. I couldn't spend my time on 1,000 votes at Hillsdale. Polling said I would lose if I did that, so I stayed in Monroe and stayed in Lenawee and worked hard. So you got to do what you got to do, and Katie, I respect Katie Beth Davis. I would never say a bad thing about her. I would never slander her on Facebook. I'd never do stupid stuff like that. That's not how I'm made up. But I get upset sometimes when she looks at me and says I'm part of the problem because I'm not in the corner screaming at the top of my lungs that we should change this. Mm-hmm. That's not how I am. That's not how we are. I mentioned at the thing at the college last week. When people get killed by police, like it was in Minnesota a couple years ago, when that gentleman was murdered, that's horrific. That cop should be taken away, and he was.
Yep.
But we've had 250 policemen murdered the last 3.5 years, and there's no outrage at all. That guy from Monroe County who got shot in Detroit working for the state police, I hear he's paralyzed for the rest of his life. Where is the outrage? No, there is no outrage. And is it because they're cops? Because we hate cops? Do people hate cops? Is it because that gentleman from Monroe was white? I don't understand it. Murder is murder, but we don't treat it like that.
Yeah, well, I agree. And I think that public safety issue is a huge one.
And when they said 2 years ago, my friend Darren Camilleri, him and I had a conversation in the elevator. He got kind of heated that I didn't understand what defunding the police was. And I told him, I know what defunding the police means. You guys changed your definition when you saw your polling going south. Then you start making up all these words. They want to just take money away, take police off the street, and make it safer for people on the streets. I didn't believe that was true, and the polling showed that. So
yeah. So what do we have to do in this country as a whole? I mean, I obviously you're in this race to win this race, and you have very, very strong viewpoints, just like Katie Beth Davis has.
A little stronger than I did 6 years ago, because now I'm in a 60% R seat, not a 54% D seat, so I can be a little more mouthy.
It's yeah. You warned me, you might be. But that's good.
It's
I like
a long
that.
Day too.
I want that. I do want that. I think that's fun. It makes for good ratings. I want you to go a little crazy, have some fun. But I want people to know who you are.
People on the far left need to come to somebody like me, a moderate, and let's talk about it. We can work things out.
Yeah, I think that we could. All right. Before we get too out of control with this, I'd like to take a break. Now remember,
sure.
Last week I asked you for a question to ask Katie Beth Davis. I did not tell her what the question was going to be beforehand.
Sure. I
sprung it on her on the air. She had no idea it was coming, and she sent me a question that she would like to ask you.
Sure.
So I'd like to take a break, and when we come back, I'd like to ask you that question, and we'll see what your answer is.
All
Sound
right.
good?
Let's get a commercial.
All right, commercial right after this. We'll be back right after this message from John Allen over at Allen Chevrolet Cadillac. All right, welcome back. If you're just joining us, I'm here with Joe Bellino, Joe Babe himself. He is running for 16th District Senate against Katie Beth Davis. We had Katie Beth on last week, and now we got Joe on. And last week I asked a question of Katie Beth Davis that you had asked her, and it was about inflation. And this week I asked her to do the same, and I'm about to ask that question of you. She texted me the other day, and she said if Joe has his way and puts through a law to ban trans kids from various school activities, how does he expect that to be enforced? How does he want schools to verify kids' genders and categorize which kids are trans and which kids are cisgenders?
So let's go back to boys and girls. I have a good friend who's my age who changed her sex. It was a he. I sang in the choir with him 30 years ago. Now it's a she. And she tells me that when you're taking these drugs, you would be banned from the Olympics. You would be banned from the NCAA for competing. But we're going to let women take these, or men take these drugs to become women, and they're already got the testosterone that a man has, or a woman taking drugs to make her stronger, to be a man. I mean, why would we deny a man from taking those drugs and running as a man, and a woman from taking those drugs and running as a woman, and we're going to let them because they're transing? I have a real problem with that. And I had a daughter run in college at U of M. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to an alumni thing at a big meet, and she knows. I mean, her husband was an All-American in Texas. She has no way in the world she can compete with him at 800 meters, a mile, 10,000 meters, because he's stronger. His lungs are different. His physical makeup is different. So I think if it's a man, he should be running with a man, and a woman be running with a woman. Now, how many have we had so far? Oh, we had a swimmer, an NCAA swimmer, who was
Leah Thomas, and believe me, last week I forgot her name when I was talking to Katie Beth Davis about it. But yeah,
and she won an NCAA title, right?
Right. And broke all kinds of records.
And the men's race, she'd be 120th or something way down there like that. So how fair is that? How fair is that for women, for a man to run?
So what about everyday kind of stuff like in school, like in high school, for example?
What's wrong with that?
Well,
high school football. No, I have a problem with that.
No. I'm not talking about the sports side of it. I'm talking about bathroom preferences, things like that. I mean,
so in a Michigan State house,
what should the schools
every
do?
floor in my building has 2 bathrooms with a man and a woman on it. In the corner, every floor's got 2 bathrooms. I use them all the time because nobody uses them. I just go in there, I flip it's being occupied, and I use it. I got no problem with that. Nobody have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with the lady that I sing with now.
Right.
I love the lady. You know, she was a man, but I love her. She's a good kid. Jamie's a great kid. You know.
So you don't have a problem, obviously, with if she goes into the women's room, right?
I would have a problem with a man that became a woman going into the women's room. I'd have a real problem with that.
Okay,
I would have a problem with that, especially great, young kids or high school or college.
Okay.
I can't grasp it. No, it's probably my fault, my problem, because I can't grasp it with my brain. And embrace it like I do the love of Jesus Christ. Someday I will, but I'm not there yet.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Honest, yeah.
Again, that's what I'm talking about. That's why I asked her the same questions, because she grew up in a different way. Yeah. She had a dad who was a homosexual.
I saw him at church all the time. Right. Good member. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she grew up with very young, at a very young age. I guess being tolerant of that sort of lifestyle, and not that. I mean, I don't get the impression that you're intolerant of it.
No, I have relatives that are gay, and I love them to death.
Yeah.
They're great people. There's people. You love people for being people. You love them for what they are inside, what they bring to the world.
So I want to switch topics a little bit. There's a couple of things I want to talk about. First of all, there's 3 ballot initiatives on the ballot this year. What's your position on each of them? We'll start with.
One I voted on in the House to get it on the ballot.
Okay.
And I like the fact that you can be there 12 years in one chamber and you can fight the bureaucracy. So I had a gentleman call me last week. He's got a problem with DEQ, whatever they call themselves now, that the Department of Environmental Quality and Water. And he said he's getting nowhere with them. And I said, well, what are you voting on 1? Well, I'm voting no. You shouldn't be there for 12 years. I said, I'm going to be there 14 years now. That's my goal, 14 years.
Right.
I have a possibility. Like Zorn's going to be there 14 years. So you don't want 12 years, but you want 14 years, which really bugs my mind. But so you want me to be gone in 6 years. So now I can't fight the bureaucracy to help you out. Now a new person comes in, takes them a year and a half to figure out where the bathrooms are, and a year and a half who the department heads are, and you have to make all these relationships. Now he's way behind the 8 ball. Why can't we have somebody there 12 years that can fight for us for 12 years?
It is now, and your proposal would have that just you could only serve in the legislature for 14 years, but it would only.
Well, right now I
or
can
how-
serve
how
6
would-
years in the House and 8
Right.
years in the Senate. That's
Okay.
14 years.
Right.
Yeah, so now it's 12 years in one chamber or the other, or you can mix it up. But I see people doing it, one or the other. And also, there's a financial disclosure part of that. People read through it. We're the only state in the nation, and the governor knows this. She talks about sunshine laws all the time. The only state in the nation that does not have any kind of financial disclosure for people in office. Only state in the nation. So I would like to know where you got your money. I mean, there was a guy running in one of the seats in Monroe County from Huron Township who ran only to change no fault. Because when you look at the financial statement, you see he's a millionaire from the places he owned for taking care of people with catastrophic injuries. That's why he ran. That would show us why he's running.
Right.
You would see that I own this and this, and I have this debt, and that's what I'm worth. So
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. Why can't we? So now we're going to vote no on this, and we're still going to be the only state in the nation, and all the liberal papers are going to write about Michigan is the worst sunshine, because
Right.
we didn't pass it.
So that's the
That's
second
one.
part of
Two,
proposal one.
Two.
So
I just
so
ask
your
people-
position, yes to
Yes,
proposal
yes.
one. It would retain limits,
Yeah.
but you could have up to
12 years.
12 years in
Yeah.
one
And
chamber
nothing
or the
else
other.
changes. We still make the same money we
Right.
made in 2004.
Right.
There's still no defined benefit. There's a 401k. There's no
Right.
health insurance when you leave.
Right.
Same thing we cut in 98. So
And the second part of that proposal one
Financial
is
disclosure.
Financial disclosure.
Yeah.
Okay, proposal two.
Proposal 2, I'm voting no because I think you should have an ID.
Yeah.
My daughter from California
Okay.
came today. I asked her last week, when you signed up for your absentee ballot in California, did you have to show them your ID? She goes, yeah, I did. Well, that answers my question. If you got to show an ID to get absentee ballot application in California, why can't you have one in Michigan? And we have a lot of screwed up laws in Michigan concerned to voting, but we do it right in Monroe County. We have great clerks, and we do it right. We're not Mrs. Winfried of Detroit, who doesn't know what the hell's going on, and says to the public, 28% of our precincts came back balanced, so we're happy. Are they happy that 30% of their kids can read third grade? I mean, I'm not sure what Detroit's thinking up there, but she's happy with 28%. I'm not. I call it a failed democracy. So
Yeah.
I think you should have an ID, so I'm voting no on that.
Okay. How about three?
3, I'm voting no. I'm a staunch Catholic, pro-lifer, and when you read that, I went to a thing last night at St. Mary's Church, and it was a constitutional attorney. They're talking about all the loopholes, what can change, and all this stuff. And it just, you can kill the baby before, if the umbilical cord is still attached, you can kill the baby. Now, the University of Chicago a couple years ago did a study with 580 biologists, people that were, real smart, a lot smarter than me, but medical people. When does life start? Now, these were 90% of people were liberal, but 85% life starts at conception. Hello, people.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, let me ask you this:
Yeah.
let's say that it does not pass. If it does not pass, then we revert back to the old law that
Well,
was
it's in
put
the
in the
courts
books.
now. It's the old
Yeah.
law's on hold right now.
Let's assume
Yeah.
that is held up, which that's a big assumption because
and we
going
have
through
the
the courts, we
Supreme
have
Court
no idea.
nominated by Democrats.
Right,
so-
exactly.
So,
But let's say that let's say it's upheld. That would completely ban abortion altogether, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, are you perfectly fine with that? Would you do anything? Would you support any bill that went through the legislature to maybe limit abortion, but still
you
allow
mean
it to some
abortion
extent?
maybe for if the mother's going to die or if it's
Yeah.
rape or incest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
In Michigan, we're real different. Maybe not different in most states. We're different. About 16% of the people think we should have abortion anytime you want, like this proposal 3 says. And we got about 14% that want the 1931 law. But you got 68% of the people in the middle that think it should be used sometimes.
Right.
So I think the courts will work it out. I'm not, I see
Well, the
nothing
courts,
coming.
but the courts can't make the law, and that was the idea
Well,
behind Roe.
but
behind Roe getting
this AG
overturned.
thinks she can make the law, and the governor thinks she can make the law. So if the governor could take on a law from 90 years ago, what transposes? What says the next governor can't change a law from 66 or 75 or 85? So I think this law will shake out. I mean, if it passes, and we can't change the Constitution unless we have 3 3/4 vote from the
I
House
know.
and Senate, and that's 83 votes or 84 votes right now. So
That's
that'll never
not
happen.
happening.
It'll
No.
never happen. Never
Now
happen.
we talked about that when the marijuana proposal, the recreational marijuana
Oh, Lord,
proposal,
what a
was
kibosh
passed.
that stupid thing
Yeah.
that was. 10% tax, lowest in the nation. Yeah, we really screwed up on that one.
Yeah,
Monroe
yeah.
Township could be rich right now, but not at a 10%.
I don't know.
That's no slam against
Yeah,
Al either. I love Al.
I don't know. There's so many places I could go with that one, especially as a prosecutor.
I know.
All right, let's talk about. You talked a little bit about the governor.
Yeah.
I can take a guess who you're supporting for
I'm
governor.
supporting Tudor. Yeah, I like Tudor. I
So
met her.
Tell me why.
I met her
what do you
8,
like
9
about
months ago. She seemed genuine to me. She had children. She was in business. She brings a lot to the table when she debates the governor, because the governor's got to take her case of debate material and throw half it away because she's not an old man. Like, she beat up Bill Schuette big time, and it
Yeah,
was easy for
yeah.
her to punch.
Right.
She can't punch Schuette like that. It's a woman. She got to do it a little differently. And the governor has, 3 years and 10 months of record that Tudor can talk about. Now, the governor came on the other day and said, I don't want to talk about the past. Let's talk about the future. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's work hard for Michigan. Well, wait a minute, young lady. Look at the things you did that we don't like. So I like Tudor, and we got along fine the first time we met, and we communicate every now and then. But what I really like is her lieutenant governor pick, Shane Hernandez.
Yeah, tell me
Shane
about
Hernandez, whose dad at 8 years old was picking cucumbers in Texas, because that's what their family did. They all worked. They made money. It was the American dream. Now they live up near Port Huron, and his dad's retired, but he took a second job because he was bored, and Shane works his butt off. And Shane will tell you, just like I said, they were put in silos. We're supposed to be Democrats. We're Latino. We're Mexican. We're Latinx. We're whatever. But he's not. He's a staunch conservative Republican. He was voted most conservative Republican 2 terms in a row for us. But he's got common sense. So I know he's in the background helping Tudor. And I love the fact that Shane came up through the grassroots. 12 years ago, or 8 years ago, whatever it was, he was trying to get rid of Brian Calley because
Right.
he wasn't conservative enough. Shane was in that fight, and Shane's been in all those fights. So I love Shane Hernandez. I love what he brings to the table. And, his dad is Sal's a wonderful guy, and his mom's a wonderful lady, and they're raising great kids, and they're good Christians, and that's what I like about him.
Do you think Shane represents the future of Latin voters in
It's
America?
funny you should say that. I read a bunch of articles last month about how people are changing in his community, and it's a cool article to read because they're blue collar, union type workers that want to do well for the family, and they don't want to give all their money to somebody who doesn't want to work. That's what's turning this election over on this cycle, because it could be different in 4 years. People are sick of taking care of their neighbor who just chooses not to work.
I gotta tell you, when I first moved into this region, Monroe County specifically was a Democratic county, but it was also very conservative. Always has been, and it was full of hardworking blue collar workers, and it still is. And I have noticed the sea change from blue to red. It's the same people. But all of a sudden, and you touched on it in the first segment, where you touched on the fact that a lot of those guys, they have those same values, those values of hard work, like you said you had, that you say mirrors what the Republican Party is.
Yep.
I think is the Republican Party changed, or is the Democratic Party changed?
No, we've both changed. But the blue collar worker, it's amazing the guys I talk to on the shop floor or the skilled trade people. The skilled trades are 65% Republican. The shop floor at a Ford factory is 55% Republican. But their union leadership never realized that until they started listening to them. For the first time ever, I got checks from 3 different unions this cycle. That's
Yeah.
never happened before. They hated me in Monroe.
Yeah.
They hated me.
I'm
Now,
telling
it was
you,
because of one
something has
lie told by
changed,
one
right?
guy, but they hated me. So
Yeah. It's fascinating. Very, very
yeah,
fascinating.
it's an interesting time to be in politics.
So what's your closing remarks to the electorate out here? Why should they vote for Joe Bellino?
Well, you should vote for Joe Bellino because I try to use common sense in every decision. I wake up every day, I pray, I thank the Lord for my sobriety, I work for my people, and I don't try to, change what's been working, but take what's not working and try to blend it to make it change and to make it better. So, things like driver responsibility fees we got rid of a few years ago. That was a big push by me in the leadership. I
Thank
have
you,
a
by the way.
hands-free bill.
As an attorney, I hated those
Oh,
things.
and Governor Snyder was going to veto it. He was
Yeah.
going to veto it because it was $350 million on the balance sheet. And if you were a bank, they were over 5 years old. You could write it off. So
Yeah, that was.
so this time, hands-free driving. Mm-hmm. It's a tough one to get through the Republican caucus because God gave us the right to read and drive, and but that's what I'm trying to push through the last 3 weeks because we have a law from 2004 that says you can't text and drive, but you can shop on Amazon and drive, which just blows my mind. Yeah. That's not common sense. So I'm all for common sense.
So what do you hope is the big thing that you accomplish in this term? What is the number one thing?
Well, we only got a few weeks left in this term.
Well, not this term. I'm assuming you get elected. What is the one thing, the biggest?
The tax for seniors. I don't want to call it the pension tax. It wasn't fair before. It was made for teachers and firemen and people on a defined benefit public pension. But if you had a 401k and pulled money out, you had to pay the tax. That's not fair. And that's one of the reasons Snyder changed it, and the Republicans. We paid for 85% of your retirement, but you don't pay the tax. This guy paid for his own in his 401k, and he's got to pay the tax. So something fair. And I thought that the $80,000 exemption after 62 years old would be nice, but it was vetoed. So we'll see what happens. The governor's talked every debate about the pension tax, and the Republicans not working with her. We've given her 3 tax cut proposals. She's vetoed
so, every one of them.
Yeah. The gas tax holiday she vetoed, called it a gimmick, and then 2 months later said, I can work with Republicans.
So what you're saying is, if you want to be able to get that through, you also need a different governor.
No, I think we can get it through, because if she's saying it again, maybe people will hold her accountable finally. We didn't hold her accountable before. Her first budget when she was elected didn't have the pension tax relief in it. She championed it, got elected. It's too much money. So I dropped the bill the first day of session when I saw it wasn't in there, and she said, "I'll do that, but I want to raise tax on 22,000 small businesses to make up for that, and that's not going to fly with us."
Well, Joe, I got to tell you, it has been an absolute blast having you on the show. Every time I have you on the show, I learn something new. And the other thing that I've noticed is that from the very first time, one of the things that we had talked about, you touched on this show, and it's part of the proposal that you have on the ballot initiative on Proposal 1, which is the fact that you want to be in the same chamber for an extended period of time so you can get through the bureaucracy.
Yeah,
right?
Get through the bureaucracy.
And
learn, yep.
And I've been watching you be able to get through the bureaucracy and be more and more successful and more productive in your role in the legislature. It's been fun to watch, and I wish you the very best of luck. I could talk to you all day about a lot of this stuff, and I wish I could.
The show's not that long, though.
I know.
Yeah.
I wish it was,
yeah.
and I wish we had more time, but unfortunately I don't. But yeah, I know you and I will probably talk for half an hour and we're done. I know you got places to go. So do I. But anyways, that is unfortunately all the time we have on this edition of This Is Our Town. But hopefully we'll have you back next session. We'll see what's going on.
All right, babe.
Sound
Thanks.
good?
Thanks, babe.
All right. Thank you. That is all the time we have for this edition of This Is Our Town. I'm Jeff Yorkey. For Joe Bellino, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.